Rob.
Mike wants closure. He wants clothes, maybe. Folks, welcome to the Random Party Generator. This is your random party tonight. Below me, regularly on Friday, is none other than Mr. Bat in the Attic, Rob Conley. The one wearing the Necromancer shirt, Necromancer Games, is none other than Bad Mike, my normal once a week spouse on Wednesday night. So Mike is spreading himself out.
Obviously has he obviously has nothing. Who has nothing going on this weekend because his family's out of town, and I'm not celebrating Thanksgiving until Saturday. So what am I doing tonight? Nothing. And
He's
guess
hanging
what?
out.
Everybody's gone. Everybody just left Eric and Rob in the lurch. I can't allow that to happen to my buddies. I can't allow them just to sit there and talk about whatever. So here, yeah. So I'm here. I'm here and I'm ready to roll. I've got my Devil's River whiskey because I have not drank the last 2 weeks of the show. And let's get loaded and get rolling. Let's get loaded and get shit shooting.
Rob is breaking out his.
What's that? Peach schnapps? Oh,
no, that's okay. I've got raspberry iced tea.
Oh boy. Okay, I'll provide the entertainment then. You guys talk logic. You guys talk logically and intelligently, and I'll.
Oh God!
I'll shoot myself in the foot time after time.
Oh, and folks, if you wonder what, like, if I start like eating these little like Swedish fishies, first off, these are the raspberry lemonade Swedish fishies. They are awesome and godsend. But my blood sugar went, hey, I'm low right before we went live, so I had to go grab the fishies. These are the emergency.
Mine did too, but I had a little Popeyes, little post Thanksgiving Popeyes action to. Oh, good. Okay, yeah, my sugar's fine.
Yeah,
my sugar's fine. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm ready to rock and roll. We were just talking D&D history, but there's a few things we're gonna. We don't have a big agenda tonight. I do want to talk to Rob about his successful and funded and finished Kickstarter because I need closure on this. I need to know what we're doing here. I already have the email, I already have the download, but Rob, you want to throw some facts and figures at us?
Yeah, sure. So it finished really strong. I didn't get 1,000 basket, but I got over 900, which is a record.
Damn.
Triple basically what I had for the basic rules for the Majestic Fantasy RPG. And but it closed over $1,500. So, $15,000. Sorry, $15,000, and that was amazing. And
well, congratulations! That is awesome because I am a huge fan of Black Marsh. I think it's a great little setting, and it needs to be back in print because
it is.
Yay!
And
I used it for years. I had a sandbox setting. I used it for one campaign only. I'm sorry, Rob. Only one campaign I used it. I would have used it longer, but that campaign actually broke up. But it was a great little setting. It's an awesome little hex crawl. I think instant classic basically, and it's great to see it back in print with all the other goodies.
Yep, thank you. And so you can get soft cover and hardcover. And the nice thing, if you can afford it, the nice thing about the hardcover is the way they print it. They put this protector paper here, but you get like basically 3 pages of blank spot for notes in the front because the inside cover is blank.
Wait, you're supposed to write in those books? That is heresy. Heresy.
Hey, I even put it in my product description when I note. I said, hey, if you can afford the hype cover, you get 4 pages of notes in the back and 3 pages of notes in front. And it's not, it's not the, it's good solid paper too. So it'd be nice to write on. So yeah, it came out really nice. I also, one thing I worried about was, the letter size version was easy to print them out because it, just occupy the entire page. But here I had to take an account to fold. So what I did is this is the same hex row as this one over here. So you're not going to lose any information because it dives in that fold right there.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, and 30 copies, non-Kickstarter backers already bought this. I released this for public sale. So that was nice. And over 100 Kickstarter backers have always ordered their hard copies as well. And as for the Kickstarter itself, I got the second draft of the layout. I'm sure you know, if you look through it, Mike, you see that I actually blocked out more spaces for art that I can buy now. And I'm just waiting for the funds to clear. And then I'll give Briss Hershey of Fat Goblin Games the list, and you should have it. He works as fast as he did before, then I should be able to start the process of doing the final layout and the print, the print proofs, either around Christmas or after Christmas. I'll make my
this is what I like, Eric. This is a professional who gets his shit out, right? I mean, I like this. I like when there's a few people who do this. When the Kickstarter is over, you have your shit in hand pretty quick. And I enjoy that. I like that kind of attention. And there's I mean, I don't mind waiting for good Kickstarter. I mean, Shadow Dark's still out there on a boat on the Shadow Barge, but I have the download for that too. But yes, I like that Rob has. This is going to be in my hot little hands before you know it. It's great. I mean, I've already have the download. I mean, I've already had the download. So.
Now the one dirty secret is it took me a lot of tries to get these 2 copies.
Oh, I'm sure.
Let's just say they were misprinting the. I ordered. I wasn't sure how the standard color. I wanted to make it standard color because I knew that would print the grayscale correctly, because there's a little bit of grayscale with the art.
Right.
They're not perfectly black and white. And so I got it printed in standard color and premium color, but I was hoping the standard color would work because it's a lot cheaper. And the standard color came in, and the print quality is actually better because the premium color is a little too light, and because it's cuts the lines too finely, and so the standard color is actually better. But when they sent me my first batch, the first one I had 3 books printed in there. I had first of all, it was the thumping guide to the newly dead for Wraith, the Oblivion RPG by White Wolf, and then in the center was the Book of Hans for Fate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they were trying to tell me. Maybe that I should be writing for Fate, and that people are going to die, so they got to prep for the dead. But and then they did the same thing with the first hardcover they sent, and they printed 2 more books in here. But luckily, I ripped them out, and I figured out how to bound this, and eventually, I'm going to at some point try to get this properly bound into here. I saw a video on it, and I said, hey, I could do this. So I got this part done. Just need to get the paper. Basically, you glue a piece of paper across there, and that will replicate what they do with the main one. But now I got my good copies, and I was able to release it. Say, hey, everybody, here's your print on demand. Because Black Marsh, the Kickstarter didn't really pay for this. I already had this all laid out and edited and everything, but I was keeping it back, so I had stretch goal basically to offer everybody in addition to the main books.
Well, I think it came out very well, Rob. But I've been following your stuff since I came into the OSR. Yours was the first. Your blog, Joe's blog, Tim's. It's amazing how many people whose blogs I followed back then are now my core group of gaming.
Those were the good old days. Definitely, because I would wake up every morning, go to my blog list, and hit Grognardia
Yep.
and Bat in the Attic and Reinks.
Chicago Wiz.
Oh, Chicago Wiz, all those guys. So many great ideas back then. I mean, it was just what we were talking about 2008, 2009. I mean, it was just everyone would have like random lists and ideas, and I just learned so much about the burgeoning OSR back then. It was just great. There was so many ideas being traded for free. People were posting free adventures, free monsters, free spells, free everything. Of course, now you only post free stuff if you're gonna compile it later on into something you're gonna sell. You don't really just give stuff away anymore.
Well, I have to say, even though my posting has fallen off, the free stuff has not. And so, if you want the latest list of the free shit that I offer on my, well, it's not shit, but the free stuff I offer on my blog, I gave Eric the link. But
Yep.
yeah.
So somebody said, Aaron said, "Is Black Mars like a greyhound?" Why don't you do like a real short pitch if you were pitching this, because some people might not know what we're talking about here because they didn't follow your Kickstarter for some reason.
Okay. So Black Horse is a setting. It's its own setting. Specifically, it's a type of setting where you have a hex map. And each hex, get the camera there, each hex has its own number. Now, what this does is allows you to pack a lot of local level information in an easy to reference format. So if you open it up, first you have your overview, which is pretty much standard for this setting, a little bit of history, a little bit about the special items that can be found. And then I go into the geography. So any piece of land that has a name on the map, I give its own entry there. But then the meat and potatoes of this are the hex entries. And as you can see, they're prefaced by the hex number in which they can found. So you can use this one of two ways. So first of all, you can say, okay, I like the fact that there's a band of brigands in hex 0107. So where is that on the map? Well, you look on the map and there is 071. But you can also go here and say, oh, well, I'm on what's in 1706 here. So you can go back and use it like an index and see that in 1706, 4 rocks from the mountain that fell, and I explain where you can find the entry, C1309, have landed and are feasting on a remain of a subadult red dragon.
Ooh.
Then 300 yards to the east is the charred remains of a 5th rock. So that one bit the dust. And this entry also says C2105, which happens to be the lair of a red dragon, and the matriarch of the red dragon happens to know that one of her brood is missing, and this kind of connects two locations together.
Oh, interesting.
So what it does is, you read through it and like any setting and get a sense of what the adventure's about, but you can also use it at the table to quickly refer something, especially if the players decide to go east instead of west. You can quickly look at the hex map to see what's there, and then quickly look up what is there, and then just proceed to improvise from there. And specifically, the story behind this particular setting, Black Marsh, is that a bunch of people were, we talked about, what Gygax did, what Dave Aronson did, and somebody mentioned, hey, this map that Aronson did for Blackmore, it's supposedly made by taking an old Dutch map, flipping it on the back, tracing it over, and that's how he came up with the overland map for Blackmore. And the blog poster, his name was James Mishler, pretty sure that he found it. So I said, you know what? I'm going to grab another old map of Holland. So if you kind of look, this is kind of Holland, but flip the other way. And instead of this being the North Sea here, I just filled this part with land. So it worked out quite well. And then the delving John of Delving Deep, a brave halfling, was working with a bunch of guys to come out with the Delving Deeper RPG, and they needed a setting. And so, I can take this map and make you a setting. And so I didn't copy Blackmore, but it's definitely stuff inspired it. I mean, there's no like grand kingdom. There's a bunch of little realms, and Castle Blackmarsh is its own thing. There's of course, a multi-level dungeon underneath the castle. There was my backstory. It was a crazy wizard who built that dungeon and took over the town and threatened to conquer everybody. And the elves led everybody against the wizard. And now the elves are in control of this human town, but they didn't clear out the dungeon. And so they don't want to risk their lives clearing out the dungeon. So the adventurers pay a small fee and they can go down there and explore the dungeon for themselves. Along with the bunch of other stuff. There's Exile Vikings. There's a Dark Age kingdom called the Kingdom of the Osterbards, and a bunch of other stuff going on.
Yeah, this is something that Rob does very well, and I'm gonna make Rob blush here because he looks so cute when he blushes. But I think this and his Points of Light are two of the best ever hex crawl setups. Buy this and if you can find Points of Light, which I don't even know if it's still in print, but you have to find a copy. Points of Light from the game.
It's in PDF. It's on the. You can find it on drive-through and PDF.
These are really excellent. It just shows you what you can do with a hex crawl because there's 4 hex crawls in Points of Light. There's this one here. So 5 hex crawls, 5 completely different settings, 5 completely different. I mean, that's one thing I love about hex crawls, and it drives me crazy because when I'm looking for something to run, I always want to run a hex crawl, and I always end up running a dang Greg Gillespie dungeon. But the thing is, Greg's dungeons have a lot of hex crawly stuff in them. He puts a mega dungeon in the middle of a hex crawl, is what he does.
Well, now, Mike, you might not know this, but Points of Light and Blackmarsh do have a little commonality. Rob told me this Easter egg. I think it's pretty cool.
They're all in the same world, right? Or they're all in the same
right.
Yeah.
Southland, which is part of Points of Light, directly fits the Blackmarsh to the south, appropriately enough. And there are some consistencies. I wrote Blackmarsh later, so Blackmarsh has some reference to Southland, and obviously Southland doesn't. But the other 2, one setting in Points of Light's an extraplanier for the god Taras, the god of war and tyranny, basically. But the other 2 settings, Wildland and Borderland, they're in the same world, but in different time periods. Wildland is after the fall of this world's Roman Empire, which was called the Bright Empire. Everything has collapsed, and it's even a more chaotic situation in Blackmarsh, with barbarian tribes roaming the land, outposts of civilization hanging on, and little remnants of the good guys and the bad guys who were fighting over who were fighting a civil war before the empire fell. And then there's Borderland, which takes place just as the civil war that brought down the empire was starting. So it was just so the players in that setting can get in on the action. And the reason I did that was, rather than write a 3 or 4 page backstory of history and stuff like that, I just, show not tell. Well, I show it by showing what the world was like in the past. So when you read through all the settings there, not only you get a little bit of the metaphysics, you get the religion and metaphysics, you get a little bit of the history, and you get stuff that's usable right out of the box.
And there's a lot. What I like about it is it gives you just a really basic. Here's the nuts and bolts. You run with it, and you can customize quite a bit, which is That's why I like these. I like Greg's stuff too, because he does a lot of that too, where he does. Here's your setting. I never use setting as written. I don't use Greg's stuff as written. I read. So I was really keen to do a hex crawl. Gosh, oh my god, it seems like yesterday. It's probably been 10 years now. And so I used Black Marsh, and what I want to do is a revolving group of players. Whoever was ready that week, because we just ended a long campaign, probably last about 3 years, probably about, I don't know, 30 or 40 sessions. And so I said, we're just going to do something where people can drop their character in. I made a really easy way to roll up characters real quick, and you boom, you're in the action. And we used Black Marsh, and I stuck Barnacus City in Peril from Dragon Magazine. I don't remember. Just stuck that on one of the rivers, and it was a frontier area where people were exploring. And I had a blast that campaign. We probably ran only about maybe 8 or 9 sessions, but it was great because it was a true drop in, drop out campaign. Whoever, I didn't do a Marches. It was West Marches campaign where they, you have this very strict set of rules where you don't adventure in town and everybody has to be back. But I don't dig that. So, but yeah, we used it and it was great. And I threw it in my own campaign world and it worked great. And that's the great thing about these kind of hex crawls is they get you a starting spot, because I think a lot of people have problems. The problem they have with hex crawls, and I'm sure Rob talks about that in his book too, is paralyzation by indecision. You're sitting there with a giant hex sheet going, okay, where do I start? What do I do? How do I do this?
Oh yeah.
If you have something like this, like Black Marsh, you have a starting spot. So, okay, here's this. I kind of want it to be a little swampy area. So I'm going to put over here. Oh, good. Rob didn't describe these 5 hexes here. I'm going to roll some random stuff there. And that it just gets you started, because I do that a lot where I have a real hard time just getting stuff started. I mean, I have a paralyzation by indecision, by too many choices. And I'm sitting there like, well, I could make the campaign like this, or I can make it like this. And I think that's what's great about a setting like this is it just allows you a little starting point, and you can riff off some of the ideas. Like Rob had an idea. They had what were the magic things you could find, Rob? I'm sorry, Viz.
Yeah.
I didn't.
So what Viz is, guys, is a real simple thing. First of all, it counts. If your magic item costs 1,000 gold pieces to make, a Viz will count as 100 gold pieces toward that. But if you're a spellcaster with a memorized spell, you can expend 1 Viz, because it's magic in physical form. You can expend 1 Viz and not lose that spell from memory, because the energy from the spell gets fueled by the Viz, but you lose the Viz.
It's just a very cool. And so I didn't use Viz, Rob. I'm sorry. We didn't use it, but it was cool. It's a cool little thing in there. It just didn't fit in with my campaign world very good. We have something in my campaign world. Long story short, there's a meteor that struck the Earth years ago, and it became contaminated. And so they call it the Emperor's Curse, because the Emperor was the one who caused, even though he didn't actually make the meteor, it was actually a dark god that he pissed off, who said, oh, yeah, I'm going to F you over, and just dropped a meteor on it. So all these pieces became contaminated, and you find the Emperor's Curse, and basically it's a radioactive material. But you can make really kick-ass magic items out of it, but you better have a lot of cure diseases. So I kind of have that in my campaigns. I didn't want to put Viz, too, because it was too similar, when you find the... Okay. And plus, it gave me a chance. It also, Emperor's Curse gives me... I can put mutants in my campaign, or mutated creatures, or creatures that don't follow the,
right.
I could say like, oh, here's a triple kobolds, and kobolds will go kick their ass, and they can shoot fire out of their eyes. Oh shit, where did that come from? Well, you go to their lair. There's a tiny piece of meteorite about that big. Oh, mutated. Oh boy. And so anyway, so I just didn't use Viz because of that. But Viz is a great idea. And so anyway, it's just. Like I said, if nothing else, you grab one of these, something like Black Marsh, and it gives you some great ideas for your own home campaign. Because one of the great things I like about certain especially Greg's stuff is really good for this, is you don't have to use it as written. You can just for instance, he had Rob had Greg had something called Highfell, which is a collection of mages towers on this floating rock up in the air. It used to be on top of a mountain. It blew up and it's floating around due to magic. You can just pull those towers out and use them in your own campaign. And I did last week. I actually pulled a tower and made it something that the player characters found because I didn't have the next stage of our dungeon really made yet. So I'm like, and they needed a base. They wanted to find a base for their party adventures. And so I had, hey, there was a 2-story mages tower. I yoinked it out of Greg's adventure. That's what I did to Rob stuff. I would yank a lot of Rob's encounters and just use them.
So Rune, say about the old stuff. Well,
there's Greg.
This is the original Rune. This is what started all. City State Campaign Map 1 by Judges Guild. As you can see, it has the hex numbers and all. But yeah, and there are 8. The only problem is in the 2000 when Necromancer Games made up a new box set. There are 18 maps of this stuff. 18. Ouch. The box set was $70. It was a pretty big ask.
And now it's even a bigger ask because it's out of print, never to be reprinted. So if you can get it under $500, thumbs up. You're doing really good. I worked with Goodman Games on some Judges Guild reprint. I did a revision for 3.5 for Thieves of Madagascar. Another guy did Citadel of Fire, and a third gentleman who was our team leader did Dark Tower, and for 3.5. And the team was great to work with, but 3.5, that was the one and only 3.5 product I ever had to do. And I laid out all 3 of them. Curtis was in there somewhere. I think Michael Curtis, you, and I can't remember the third guy.
So after that was done, I went to Joseph Goodman and said, look, we got these hex crawl stuff, these box sets, and that, $70. I have an idea how to make this smaller. I'll just use a letter size map, and I'll have 4 of them in book so people can pick which one they like. And he said, and 4E was coming in, and we were bouncing ideas off another, and said, they call them like points of light. And said, yeah, you think that's trademark? I don't think so. And we brought it, Test, the trademark database was online, recently online. So we searched it. Sure enough, Wizard did not trademark the term. So Joe took it for himself and used it for the series title, and I wrote it. And, that was my first independent publishing project.
And there's 2 points of light, right?
Yes, there's Points of Lights 1, which we described, and there's Points of Lights 2, which has a theme, which is exploration of the new world. And I didn't do a quite North America, South America analog, like the North American type of setting. It really had a Bronze Age Greek style civilization with the medieval kingdom, the Grand Kingdom. I reused some of the names and ideas from the first Points of Light. They were establishing colonies there, and then there was Amaku, which is basically an area like Mexico, but the empire was even stronger than the Aztecs were in real life. And so the explorers from the old world were really at a disadvantage. And plus, there was a Cthulhu type style plot that the reason the empire was in that area was to keep a lid on it, of course. But the old worlders were poking around. They didn't know about it, but they were poking around with things they shouldn't. So that was the essential, plot tension of that land. And then I wrote up the Misty Isles, which is like the Spice Isles, Caribbean. It was more like a Lost World kind of deal. And then there were 2 competing old world powers, And then there was the Lost World that was dominated by lizardmen enslaving humans, uh, and a bunch of other little oddball stuff that I threw in there. But it was a lot of fun to write.
It was a lot of fun to read when I got them, and the fact that, as Mike points out in the chat, that they're system neutral is, in my opinion, what most settings should be. They should be as free of crunch and full of fluff as you can humanly make it, because it allow, like the Lost Land setting from Frog Eye Games is systemless. It's system neutral. You can take that core book and play it with Swords and Wizardry, GURPS, the Fantasy Trip, any of those games, Rollmaster, and it'll fit perfectly because there are no stats. There's no stats to worry about, and I prefer my settings like that because I like to read setting material. Even if I'm not going to use it, I like to peruse it, and not having to worry about thinking in a rule set makes it a lot easier.
I don't use anything that's written anymore. I use I use it for starting and jumping off point, or I'll steal a map or I'll steal an idea. Right. I really don't use anything as written. So those kind of things that are very just I like Mike Stater's stuff too, because he does Nod and he has this. I don't know how the guy does it, but he'll have a book this thick with 800 locations in a hex crawl, in a themed hex crawl, and it's just fun to pull out because there's some of them are really interesting, or they'll pique your imagination. That's what stuff's there for, really. I mean, we got, it's really interesting if you look at the trajectory of our hobby, because it started out where Gary didn't even understand why the company We Warriors wanted to publish something called Palace of the Vampire Queen, because who's going to buy that? Everybody wants to make their own adventures. They don't want to buy your adventure. And then they got blown away when they went through like 5 or 6 printings, and they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna yank that back from you, and we're gonna do our own D&D adventures. And if the ones they started out with were not hex crawly, they were all based on tournament modules, so they're very railroady. Now I know you don't think that stuff like the Giant series or Tomb of Horrors, it doesn't seem like it's a railroad, but it is, because you're there and here's your dungeon. You got to do this. If you decide in the middle of Tomb of Horrors to leave, that's it. The adventure's over. There's nothing around there. There's no talking about the area or there's a sub dungeon over here or city. No, it's just
the only thing that was close to that was Keep on the Borderman, and which was not a tournament dungeon.
Which, by the way, Rob, is probably why it is in the top 5 most popular written adventures of all time, because it wasn't a railroad. Giants Adventures are roads. Now another popular adventure is obviously Village of Hamlet, which is not a railroad. It's a setting. It's a setting where here's a dungeon off here, but there's lots of other stuff you do. So anyway, they kind of got in this rut where they were doing all these tournament adventures. They got better at it. I will say they got better at it. Like S4 is a great. So S4 spends a lot of time developing all the area around Igwell's dungeon, but then once you get in the dungeon, you're kind of in a this is a set area. But it does a really good job of setting up many random encounters around there, because they, like I said, they got better at it. But yeah, they really never published anything this style. I think Keeping the Borderlands might have been the closest thing they ever published to a pure hex crawl. Hey, here's just a bunch of things.
Well, later TSR did. I mean, they have In Search for the King, and that was a nice overland adventure with political tones that I used quite a bit.
But that was also a tournament too, if I remember correctly. These were all tournaments. They spent a lot of time.
Not The Search for the King.
Which one was that? If it was C4 and C5, it was.
It was an N module. N
series. You mean number N3. N3 is it's a really good module. And N1's pretty good too. It's not railroady. That's the Cult for Repcon God, which has a great rep. It's a good module. So they got better at doing that and saying, you don't have to do exactly what we're telling you to do. You can run around and do other things. Right. But at first they were kind of stuck in that style, stuck in the railroad style too. And then they moved out, and And I think it's interesting because people think of old school play, they think of hex crawls. TSR didn't publish hex crawls. Even Keep in the Borderlands is not a pure hex crawl. It's a location based adventure that here's your base, and you really want to get to this place called the Caves of Chaos. Now there's other things you can do around here, but that's pretty much it. You know, it's not really a pure. It's probably the purest.
And let's face it,
to a hex crawl.
The Caves of Chaos had a little plausibility issue because if that were the real place, the moment you mess with one of the caves, everybody else in all the caves go, "Hey, what's that out there? Oh, look, adventurers! Kill them all!" And you immediately be mobbed by the entire valley.
You could say, well, unless you sat there and say, well, the goblins don't really care about what happens with the orcs. Matter of fact, they don't. They would be happy if you killed the orcs. You know, so
they would wait until you come out bloody,
and then they would all jump you. Yeah,
right. They use it to their advantage. But now there's something that we're not even touching on with B2, Keep on the Borderlands. It is such a quality, timeless adventure. When D&D Next, which is what became 5e, was being play tested, they were using Keep on the Borderlands.
Because they haven't had an original idea in 25 years.
And I'm not saying that they did, but they also recognized that the quality for that adventure, the ability for it to be run and to test different aspects of the game, was second to none, which is great. Now you look at where 5e is and the quality of the adventures they're putting out, and it's nothing like what they were initially trying to be influenced by.
Right.
You know, now in 5e, you can be a barista and make your grande frappuccinos.
Well, you could have a fun time going through. You know, if I ever had time, when I don't have time, I would take B2 and go through there and cross out all the words you can't use anymore. Go through the. By the way,
let's not get into that. You know?
I want to get into that, Rob, because I want to know if I just want to go if you had any feedback on that or on Eric. Did you get any good feedback on that?
What's interesting that I find interesting about the feedback on it. Feedback was overwhelmingly positive. A few people said I was too neutral, but that's where I'm supposed to be coming from. But I found it interesting that the overwhelming number of likes were before the second coming of it. It settled out, and the day after it had a big boost in traffic again. And then my like ratio went from like 98.2% down to like a 92%, because people were coming in to dislike it, which means they saw it, they heard it in whatever community and went, oh, you gotta brigade it. It doesn't matter.
How dare you, sir? How dare you not like modern rights?
There's no negative feedback anyway when it comes to like and dislike. All they know is that, hey, more people came to give a reaction. So, and again, my main issue with the whole thing is that they are not doing a change log. They're not indicating the changes. If you have the source material in print, you can see what it was. And I'm not, again, my argument wasn't these changes are horrible. My argument is if you're going to make these changes, you should be acknowledging that you made these changes. And that's something I agree with the original author of the post online, who did a lot of work on that, showing the changes. And he was like, he agrees overwhelmingly with the changes that happened, but even he was like, they should be documenting it. That's what my
well, that's a modern problem, though. That has to do with just the minute we had word processors, you never had what we would call a true manuscript of anything anymore. I mean, there's some old manuscripts of Stephen King in the in the archive. I can't remember what university he does, to University of Maine or whatever, that he wrote like in the 70s before word processors, and they're printed out all the this and that. When you get a manuscript of something written in 2021, you're getting something that's gone through revisions already. You're never getting the pure product ever again. That just doesn't. it's never going to happen. You're getting something that was already worked out in somebody's head, and even though there may be corrections on there, it's not going to be a pure, that this came straight from the writer's. This is the first draft the writer ever typed out. That just doesn't happen anymore. And I think you're seeing the same issue too with. You're never going to exactly know what the manuscript said to begin with, unless, like you said, Eric, you have a hard copy, which, by the way, you're not going to have hard copies anymore.
Well, if you have a PDF, you actually, and you're saving it on your drive, you have a hard copy. Listen, you go to drive-through will tell you, hey, this file was last updated on June 22nd,
Right.
2023. Whatever it was, there was a change.
But there's a change, Eric. But the problem is these services automatically, like Amazon, they automatically update your product. They don't ask you, do you want an update to your product? It's just updated, and sometimes you don't notice it unless you read it. And like, wait, lines have changed here, and they're not telling you what lines they're updating. They're just updating the product, and then you have to go in and find out what they changed.
So Mike, if you are not saving multiple revisions of your work, you're taking a big risk of losing it because your computer decides to burp or have a brain fart one day.
Right.
So if you look at my folder for how to make a fantasy sandbook, I got Rev 1 in there. And then at some point, I decided to make a Rev 2 because I started to rewrite the chapter. But, Rev 1 is still in there. And I'm not holding up myself as a paragon because I have lost stuff in the past. But, I have files dating back to 1992 because I keep good backups.
Well, here's what I mean, Rob. Like, so when I have I have a short story, or actually, it was a serial, SERIAL, not Captain Crunch. It was a serial that I wrote in the when I first got my typewriter. I got a brand new typewriter in like 1978, 79. I wrote this goofball serial, and I still have the original one I wrote in longhand with corrections that I then went ahead and typed. So I spelled certain words wrong. Unless you're not using spell check, you're never going to have what I would call the original document. You're going to have a word that's already been spell checked a couple of times. Yes, and you print it off, but it's already, if you spell, if you spell a word wrong, it's going to be corrected. You're never going to have an absolutely pristine manuscript that this is the first manuscript of this. It's more like, well, here's the first manuscript I printed out, but as you can see, a lot of it was it went through Grammarly first, it went through spell check, and there were still mistakes, and I still want this sentence to go over here, and then I wanted to cut this paragraph. But I mean, do you see what I mean? You're never going to have a absolutely pure. This is what
I don't know. Okay, so I don't. I mean, even
Rob, I don't write longhand. I don't write longhand.
I despise my freaking typewriter because what happened is, and I still have my longhand notes. I'm not going to yank them out, but I still have my longhand notes there. But there will come a point when I type the stuff out when I'm satisfied that it's going to sit that way, and I just want a clean copy of it. But anytime I type back in the day, I made sure that I knew I was going to type in, because God forbid you have to use freaking whiteout or retype a whole page. That was for the freaking birds. When I first got a hold of a word processor at college, when they had a Unix system, a mini computer, not the mainframe, but the mini computers started coming into vogue, or common use, and they had a word processing suite with a spreadsheet, and that was a godsend. That was a freaking godsend. I could make a mistake. And you got to remember, Mike, I had learning, I was learning disabled in English. I pulled A's in just about every other subject but the English. And so this stuff was a chore. So it may be, a golden age for you, but it wasn't for me. And I'll
Well, I
take
mean, I would say
your
it's a
point.
golden age. I'm just saying that I used to write things. I don't write anything in longhand anymore. Everything I write, like my D&D group that I ran last weekend, when I had a dungeon I wanted to go through and 3 random encounters. I typed it out on my computer. I don't longhand it anymore at all. And then as I'm doing it, I'm correcting it. I'm doing spell check. I'm doing it because I don't like to look at my own spelling mistakes, my own mistakes. So you're not getting purely what came out of my head when I thought about these encounters. You're getting probably the third or fourth head revision.
I don't think that is as much of an issue. Listen, when I was an administrative sergeant in NYPD, and I was working on whatever project, if I was doing a big report and I was working on it 3 days in a row, I would save it for the new day. So I could always go back and look at what the report was, where I was, did anything change, what information. So I always had, on a working report, I could have 7, 8, 9 different versions of it, because each day I saved the latest version as a new file without overlapping onto my old ones. It was just the way of making sure you could always go back and you didn't lose something as you went on, or something.
Yeah, you change your mind about something, rewrite the chapter or paragraph, and then 3 or 4 revisions later, that original idea was better. I better support it.
So, but when it comes to a product, it's something that a consumer is buying or using. Like, see, if you have a PDF and you own you've downloaded your PDF, and then you download it 2 years later, and you can see, oh, okay, well, now the new PDF, it's called the same file, but now they added hyperlinks. Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, look, I can see they changed a few words here or there because I have the original and I have the new one. The problem with what WotC is doing with their digital books, and this is unique to WotC, is WotC does not allow PDFs for their core books. Right? So they can go in and say, and remember, now 5e is now 2014 5e. D&D 2014. And now when you look at D&D 2014 on their service, it appears that it always was written as it was. To me, that's 1984. I find that to be deceptive, because I can go back to my core books and print, or if I was somebody who happened to get this stuff in PDF, which I'm not, but I know a number of people who have, they can go back and in 2018, this is what it was. And now in 2023, this is what it was. They're not showing that. And that to me is where it gets, because if it can happen with your D&D rules, it could theoretically happen when you go to New York Times and start searching articles.
It's already happening, Eric. It's already happening.
It's
already happening.
Well, there's some extent, but it does at least say revise. They don't tell you necessarily always what the revision is, but they don't claim that this article was revised 6 days later. It'll indicate that. They don't tell you, but they revised. But WotC isn't even indicating that there's a revision. They're like, change log.
I just think that this is just the future, because this is what's going to happen. This is what's already happening, and it's going to happen. It's how many times you're reading a story, and I don't read print newspaper anymore, but I have I read online. I read a story, right. And at the very, very end, you go to the bottom. It says correction. The blah blah was listed as having watched CBS News that night. It's been changed to NBC News. Correction. So they'll list the correction, right? It's not in the story itself, but if you go all the way to the end of the story, this is okay. This is a correction. But the problem is, there's a lot of places that don't put the correction right there. They may just say, hey, it's close enough. We've done, it's nothing. Nobody's going to get worried if we said this is 45th Street. We're going to just switch it to 43rd Street. Now they're supposed to do it, and most news services, legitimate ones, will do that. They'll say correction. First story had Officer Gonzalez named as Officer Ray, and we've changed it in this story.
Right.
And so they will update stuff like that. But there's some places that won't. They won't update that because they're like, yeah, we fixed it. We fixed it. It's the first information was wrong, and so we fixed it because the second information is right. So I mean, that's already happening. That's already going, and it's going to just continue to happen too. Where you're not going to get. So I guess the point I'm just making is, I think this is just the grind of progress, Eric. I think you're just going to see more and more of this, where the rule book you get and you look at it and go, man, this doesn't read the same. There's something off about this. And you're going to pull out an old hard copy and say, oh yeah, because they changed 8 paragraphs here. And I know it because I had the hard copy. I mean, and then they took out every mention of the word primitive. It's no longer primitive now. I can't even remember what the fill-ins for primitive were, but yeah, they're going to do that. They're going to republish a TSR product. I don't know, say, the Forbidden City. I won the Forbidden City.
They took care of that with the disclaimer because they are, if nothing else, too lazy and don't want to spend the man hours going back and rewriting old material. But that disclaimer is going to be put on later material, probably anything prior to like 2018 if they don't feel like going back and revisiting, because like I say, this was a product of a different era, and different sensibilities. But yeah, I don't expect them to go back and change, like the A series, the Slaver series, because slavery is now a verboten word.
Well, they won't even be able to publish that. That's a bridge too far for them at this point. They're not going to go back. They're never going to do anything with that again. They
did a great job republishing that. They did a lot of money on that one, and they have admitted that the one setting that everybody is clamoring for, and it's not Greyhawk, folks. I wish it was. The one setting that everybody is clamoring for, that everybody on every survey, what comes in number one as to the survey they want to see come back. If you say Birthright, I'm going to laugh at you.
Dark Sun.
Yeah. Dark Sun is a setting that people want to see.
And slavery was baked into that setting.
That is a grim setting. I'm surprised if they ever
slavery and gladiators and half breeds. Oh dear! Yeah, how are they going to publish that ever again?
It should be perfect for them, because what was even it was never about playing the bad guy. You were always the plucky few who were trying to get the world back the way
Rob,
it was.
that should be anything with slavery. You should never be the slavers. If you're the slavers, you're doing this whole thing wrong. They still don't want you to do it. They don't care if the slavers are all the bad guys. They don't want any mention of slavery under any circumstances, because I think it's a default thing that your slavers are bad guys and you're supposed to be fighting them. They don't care. That's not important to them. It's just the fact that they don't even want to mention it anymore.
So, Eric, I'm showing my screen just to show that I do indeed have my oldest files still intact back when so I don't know if you could see this, but
I can almost wait. Is that 19? No,
1991.
All right. Okay.
1992 up to 1993. And then around 1993, I got a hold of Corel Draw, started doing Corel Draw stuff, and and just I kept coming out more and more and more. And now this is like my Waterlands folder. This is all my writing, all the stuff I ever wrote about. I keep it in here. But recently, like within the last 5 years, recently, I now keep my main writing folder on my Google Drive, because Google Drive will track your last versions for 90 days. So if I accidentally pop off a file or overwrite something that I shouldn't have, I can go back and look at my previous upload and retrieve that version, which have saved my bacon. But
pretty cool.
Just to illustrate my point, if you go back here, you can see I have multiple revisions of how to make a Fanny sandbox, including annotation, which have been edited by Joe. And so I have before and after. And so if you're writing, make revisions, especially if you're going to substantially change a part of your text because you want to pursue an idea, because you might want to go back to that old version or merge the two.
That's pretty complete. I mean, I know I have to go through my files every once. I get repeated downloads, especially stuff that it's like, all right, I don't need like 14 versions of B2 and PDF, but I keep on coming across it in my travels and going, oh, just in case, and you're like, oh my god, how many of these do I need? So
Yeah, I used to have all my PDF with my writings, but then it got because I had it organized in similar ways. But then again, about 5 years ago, it was just too much. So now I have a my writings folder and I have my reference folder. So I have all my GURPS PDFs and AD&D PDFs and D&D PDFs in there, and so forth and so on. But speaking about companies not mentioning the revisions that they make, I mean, let's face it. I mean, we don't advocate piracy here, but we know that there are copies of all the 5e books floating out there.
Mhm.
So people can do these comparisons and find out what was changed. They just can't stuff it down a memory hole and make it go away. It's there, and the light will be shown on it. You might as well fess up and say, "Hey, okay, these are the exact changes we're making," because it's going to come to light, and you might get criticized for it. But when you make an artistic decision like that, not everybody's going to like it.
all right, well, there is a new adventure for 5e.
Yeah, I got it. I printed out for this and read it.
Because I know a lot of the discussion I've seen on the parallel in Pinebrook is less to do with the whatchamacallit, less to do with the adventure itself and more with the change of Rule Zero. Which they say Rule Zero now is have fun.
Mhm.
And Rule Zero used to be pretty much, don't argue with the GM. And if you argue with him afterwards, rulings not rules, but let the GM make the rulings.
Right.
Now,
I thought Rule Zero was that what the GM rules was how it goes.
now it's everyone have fun. It's fine if everyone agrees to change the rules as long as doing so means the game is more fun for everyone. Which literally, and I hate using the word literally, because
Oh
it
dear.
doesn't. I know, but that literally changes what people see as Rule Zero. I'm a bit. I'm going to pull it up on the screen. I'm a bit perturbed by it because it.
Well, it's definitely inaccurate because that's not what Rule Zero is.
Well,
They're just trying to change it.
Rule Zero of D&D is simple. Have fun. It's fine if everyone agrees to change the rules as long as doing so means the game is more fun for everyone. So, if the GM makes a ruling, and according to this, as written, if one person disagrees, it's no longer fine because everybody has to agree if you're going to change a rule. And the whole idea of rulings, not rules, is that the DM can adjust
But
and change
but
things as
but see,
needed.
I'm over all this, Eric, because we play our games however we want to play at this point, and I think most people do. And nobody really cares what Watsy says anymore. That they're just throwing that out there, but everybody just does what they want to do. And so I know some people get really, not you, but I'm saying I know people out there that get bent out of shape when Watsy says, "Oh no, you got to do this, man," and they're like, "What? I can't believe it." Who cares, man? It's not affecting your home game, and I understand it's part of the whole collapse of society or whatever. People get all bent out of shape about. But I mean, so it's stupid. Yeah, nobody's. I mean, I don't care what Watson tells me to do. I don't even have a rule zero. Fuck you. If you don't want to, we're going to have fun, but we're going to have the fun that I direct because I want to have fun too. If I'm not having fun,
whoa. Now, let's get some context here. Why does the DM's ruling stand? I mean, it's simple because only the DM has complete knowledge of what's going on. The player doesn't have the context to make a ruling. The way our traditional D&D games are structured is that we run the world, and of course we know it, the players, except when they're muttering among themselves. But that's fine. But you know, obviously we don't know that part. And they're welcome to do it in my games. I don't care. But as far as making a ruling, they don't have the information to come to a decision what the rules ought to be. They don't have all the facts.
right.
And it's not a power trip. It's a simple nuts and bolts of how to run a campaign. And, they say it's fine if everybody agrees to change the rules. It's going to do to make the game more fun for everybody. Well, let's take this adventure. This adventure is about a party going out on a patrol led by a captain who's being an NPC. Along the way, they encountered a baby dragon, and it's a silver dragon, so it's somewhat friendly. Not going to eat you up kind of dragon. And it quickly becomes the baby dragon can talk, and the guy has a reference to dragon on him, and they can quickly figure out that the dragon. They explain that the DM should roleplay the dragon and use this dragon glossary in the back to say the role play what the baby's saying, and the player pay attention. They can figure out the baby wants to go back to his mama.
Right.
And along the way, they have a couple challenge. They meet ice creatures. They have a puzzle to figure out, and then they finally have this big fight, and they finally get to role play with the mother, and so forth and so on. But the players don't read this. They don't know the content. Yeah. So if they go say, hey, why don't I do this, and what they come up with, they think it's fun. They don't know what the adventure is, so it might just ruin the adventure for them, and that would be that.
There's a level of trust built in. You have to trust your dungeon master so first of all, when you're playing D&D, I think one of the most egregious sins a dungeon master can do is inconsistency, because be a tough dungeon master, be an easy dungeon master, be impartial, be partial, be whatever, but be consistent in your rulings. If you're inconsistent, that's the worst thing ever, because then players just don't know what to expect, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, and that's why, even today, I mean, even though I wrote my own rule book, I try to be by the book as possible when it comes to, rulings, because when I was younger, I have my hearing loss, and it's hard for me to hear people. So if I relied on the rule book as written, as far as resolving specific action, I could be consistent. I was a lot more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to role playing NPCs, screw whatever the author had to say. If I was using something pre-planned, I'm going to role play how I'm going to role play.
Yeah, absolutely.
To me, that wasn't a rule.
And you should too, and you should. But I mean, I say that the thing about consistency, because I tell. So one of the things luckily I play with a lot of mature players, but I try to tell players at the table when I do a con game or something, is that you have to trust the DM is not going to screw you. And a lot of people have had really bad experiences with DMs, and so. Let's say you're playing a party, and okay, we're attacked by mummies. Okay, I throw burning hands on them. Doesn't do anything. Well, no, you're wrong, DM, because it says in the rule book that fire does this to them. Well, it doesn't do that to them. Well, why not? Well, you don't know why not. Well, you have to tell me why. Like, no, you have to figure out why this is happening. There's a reason this is happening. You're just trying to screw us, man. You suck. Fire hurts mummies, and you're not, And the reason may be these are illusions. This is an illusion. That should be your tip off that the fires are hurting it. Not that these mummies are immune to fire, but this is not a real mummy. Now, my players now can pick up on that. And they'll pick up on inconsistencies like that because they know my game world enough. But somebody starting out is just going to think, especially if they've had a bad DM experience, is just going to think, well, the DM's screwing with me because he saw me throw the fire, and if I had thrown something else, they'd have been immune to that. But since I threw
here's
fireball, they're
the
immune to
thing,
it.
though. Here's the trap in that. You got to make sure that it's discoverable. I mean, yes, if the players screw up, by all means, reap the reward, reap the consequences of their folly. However, to be fair, you got to keep a check on yourself and always ask you, is this neat thing? Is there a way for them to discover what's going on? Is it reasonable under the circumstances? And it took a lot of years for me how to tweak things so that I got that right balance.
But I'm saying, this is the kind of thing that will derail. Let's say you're 5e guy. This will derail 5e guys for half an hour as they argue about it. Whereas old school guys, I'm not saying this is as an absolute, obviously not absolute, but a lot of old school guys will roll with it and say, okay, there's a reason. This is a reason it's happening. Either the mummies are immune to fire, which is that's a mutation mummy. I don't know why, or there's something not right here, something wrong here. And look, I saw one time. I was playing D&D at a local game store with my group, and the group next to us was 3.5, 3.0. This is probably about 3.0 have been out a couple years. We played an entire adventure while they argued over 2 rules. I mean, literally for an hour. Argued over what a rule could and couldn't do based on their knowledge of, well, you're doing this wrong. You're playing this wrong because this is what's happening. No, I'm doing it because this is happening, or I changed this in my world. Well, you're not allowed to change things in your world. You can't run your world like you want to run it. You have to run. I mean, it was the craziest thing. We were giggling over at our table just because it was such a waste. It was absolute waste of time.
Sure, I had a player. Okay, so I'm running a 5e game online, and a friend of mine, it was mostly, everybody get out their bingo card. It was mostly from friends from my LARP days, and but one of the friends brought another guy who, always talked me up, said you got to join Rob's game. It's a fun game, and he did. Well, the problem was. And he's not a bad player, but he's a computer. He actually works for the game industry. And let's just say he has a very rigid view on how game rules ought to work. And what happened was we were in this dungeon, the 5e dungeon of the Mad Archmage. And the party, there was this big throne room. The party goes across it. It opens up a door, and they find a bunch of guards in there. And a fight ensued. Well, the rest of this guy was on the other side of the room because he was poking around. Because I'm very good about handling party splits and bouncing between the players, so they were used to it. So he stuck around and he was investigating something. But now the fight ensued, and within 2 rounds, the party was away from the door that they entered from. One of the bad guys stepped out of the door to keep watch, to make sure that nothing, because the party were in between, they were in between where the party came in. And so this character wanted to make a stealth roll to cross this throne room, which was lit because the guy was holding the torch. I was using maps and token, though it was obvious there was no way, there was nothing blocking line of sight at any point. For at least 30 yards. The throne room was big. And he make a stealth roll. He didn't roll a nat 20. And he said, okay, I go up and backstab, get my stealth there. Hold on, back up. First of all, you rushed ahead. Because he's an experienced adventurer who he would know if his stealth is not going to work. And I said,
look, the rules cover that, yeah.
Yeah, and I said, look, if you move out there, you're going to get spotted. But I make my stealth roll. You can't spot me. You have to make a perception roll. no, he's watching. There's no way for you to sneak up on it. And he had a total meltdown. And he tried to argue me, and I said no.
Oh, Eric, I'd have loved it on fly on
And
the wall.
he basically rage quit, and it's still upended the entire session because he rage quit. Who just
I'm
somebody
sorry,
just
that's
came
so
on?
funny. I just think that stuff's great when that happens because, look, I agree with the old Gary Gygaxism that everybody should get a save and throw for stuff because you just don't know. Okay, yeah. So you're in the middle of a town marketplace. It's noon. There's no place to hide. It's light. The city guard walks around the corner, and the guy goes, "I want to try to hide in shadows." I'd give him a chance, but I'm going to say, look at your situation here. Now, there's always a chance something could, when you say you're going to hide in shadows, I see that if say you make your correct roll, I'm going to give you a minus on this, a minus on this, minus. So you got a 5% chance. You roll it. Okay, so the minute you try to hide, there's a commotion on the other side of the marketplace because they see another wanted person they want, and they ignore you for a second. You did the 1 in a million luck shot. You basically have the luck of a protagonist in a Edgar Rice Burroughs story, or just where the most where my favorite quote about the Philip Jose Farm was a Edgar Rice Burroughs story is a story where a He-Man, a hot chick, and a tiger are in a jungle and they'll all meet the same place at the same time because that's just the way he wants the story to roll. And so, I think those things do happen, but yeah, you've got to, as a player, know that, look, the dice are not the ultimate arbiter here. You have to use some common sense here. You've got to use some kind of common sense.
Well, in the case of the market, I would ask the player what he's trying to do by hiding in shadows.
Yeah.
And then I would point out the ways, okay, it's a marketplace. There are people there. If you do blah, 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 you can be unnoticed. It won't be hiding in shadows.
Right. Basically, that's what yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, with the throne room,
there was none of that.
There was a guy outside the door, and he was 30 yards from the last pillar that he could hide behind was 30 yards away from the guy. And even if he did a full move in D&D 5e, he couldn't attack the guy. And it just wouldn't hear it.
I know, I get you. And then you have players like that, and usually, my players were probably like that 20 years ago. They're very mature now, and I just have to point out, okay, look what you're doing here, and they usually back off at that point when you point out, like they know at this point, they like the thief characters, they know that you can't do a backstab unless they don't know you're there. If they have seen you there. And you can say, I'll let the characters even say, okay, does he see me? Like, yeah, he sees you. I mean, it's obvious you've been noticed. You're not going to be able to backstab. Well, can I still swing from behind? Yeah, you can swing from behind. You'll still get a bonus there. You'll get your bonus from behind, but you're not going to be able to backstab. They usually, okay, no problem. Now, 25 years ago, they probably would have engaged me in a, well, by the rules, it says that I'm attacking from behind, this and that. I'm sneaking. And so, don't you have to roll to see if the guy notices me? And that, so I think that's part of the whole relationship, like I was talking about with the DM, where you have to trust. There has to be a trust there, and you have to be consistent in your rulings. And I am scrupulously consistent in that, if you are seen, you cannot backstab. You can swing from behind, but you cannot backstab. And the circumstances where you're seen are pretty, are this. And what those circumstances are. I do the same thing with charm. I know a friend, a very good friend, who they have not used charm in their campaign for probably about 20 or 30 years because they could never decide on a definition of what charm actually was, or what a character who charms somebody else, what that character has to do or doesn't do. They just don't have charm in their campaigns. It just doesn't work.
So what happened with my first go around with AD&D back in the early 80s is by the middle 80s when I was in college, I grew so frustrated I grew frustrated, and I switched to Fantasy Hero, which worked for a year or two, but it had its own issue. They didn't quite scrub all the champions, the superhero stuff out of it. So it got a little too over the top at times.
Right.
But then I switched to GURPS, and that's what I stuck with for 20 years. If I needed to know something, there was an answer for it. And it wasn't, despite GURPS recitation, to resolve any particular thing is never really complicated. They just are pretty comprehensive, though. But once you learn what you typically do in a campaign, it becomes pretty snappy what you do. But so yeah, so if you want to sneak up and knock out somebody else behind, I could read up on the GURPS, and it makes sense. And because if they're not explicitly being fantastical, GURPS is pretty grounded in how life works. So and they do their research, so they always make sense. But now that after 20 years, I grew and I learned D&D, the history of D&D. I returned to D&D because I knew how to make it work, the way I wanted it to work.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a problem with charm like some groups do, and I can see their problem. This is my friend. Their problem grew with that. The players wanted it to be this ultimate spell. I mean, way more powerful than the first level spell, and the DM was trying to rein them in, and they kept continually having fights over it. Whereas my characters, they pretty much bought into what I say. Is that this character is your good friend, which means your good friend. Eric. If Eric and I are at a convention, and I tell Eric, "Hey, Eric, could you go get me a hamburger at the thing?" He'll probably do it. He'll be like, yeah, whatever. You want a hamburger? I'll get him one too. If I tell Eric that I need you to have a fighting retreat here as I go out the room, you're going to be taking on these 6 dark elf warriors as I get out. Eric's going to like, oh, whoa, buddy, I love you, but I don't want to die for you. And then that's that's kind of our charm, is that they'll do what a friend will do for you to an extent. They're not going to sacrifice their life for you, that. And so but like it all goes back to what I'm saying about consistency in rulings and the buy-in. You have to have a buy-in with the DM. And I think one of the issues which was really interesting when third edition came out, because we'd never seen this before in the history of the hobby, or actually we saw it, but it was in the 70s. So when you were in the mid 70s, when D&D first came out, people started playing and they weren't really sure how to play. You usually had this one guy who was the dungeon master, and he was an older dude who had read the rules, and his rule was law, and he knew what he was doing. And that's how we learned the game. We learned the game at the feet of dungeon masters for 20, 25 years. When third edition came out, everybody was on equal footing. Nobody had been playing third edition since 1990 or 1980. And so you had a lot of players that felt like they knew the rules as well or better than the DM. And they weren't wrong always. They weren't always wrong, because a lot of those DMs had learned the rules with them. And that's the story I was telling about, the guys who had the fight table next to us. That was the fight, was that the fact that the DM knew the game, but that they had all started playing third edition at the same time. So he couldn't declare, well, I know the rules better than you. I've been playing for 20-something years. No, they'd all been playing for 3 years. And so they felt like, we know the rules just as good as you do. We're not going to let you get away with that because, well, this is how I interpret it. Well, we don't think that's true. I think we benefited and the old school guys, we benefited by always having that guy when you rolled into a group who probably knew the rules very well. I've been playing since like 1978 or whatever. That was me, because I started in 1978. So I was very lucky. I'd get with the group and, how long you guys been playing D&D? Oh, we just, 1987, we just started. Well, I've been playing since 78. Oh, okay. This guy knows what he's doing.
Right.
We're going to back off a little bit. We're not going to try to question him on the rules, because he's going to run rings around us. He could probably tell you what page that's on, or this or that. Or what I would usually do is say, look, I understand what you're saying. We've tried the spell that way, but here's what happens when you do that. And then they would go, okay. Like my big thing with I would usually tell players is, you got to understand, if I do the spell that way, the bad guys get it that way too. So if you say that a charmed person turns you into a literal zombie that will do anything they tell you to do, you're going to get charmed by a bad guy. He's going to tell you to shove your head up your ass, and you're going to try to shove your head up your ass. You're going to sit there, pull all your clothes off, and sit there on the ground trying to shove your head up your ass. Do you want that to happen? No. Well, that wouldn't happen. Well, why not? You're telling me that's what charm is. Yeah, you're right, man. You're right. I don't want that to happen to me. And that's one of the reasons we didn't have crits for a long, crits and misses, because I tell the players we can do crits, we can do misses. Now we do that now, but we have a system. We have a certain system we use. It said if you roll a 20, you immediately roll a die 6. You roll a die 6, it's double damage. That's it. That's our crit system. That's all it is.
Right.
You double
Oh,
damage.
my crit system, I am.
And the bad. By the way,
I borrowed a. It's not a direct copy of anything that Hackmaster has or 5e, but I like their idea of exploding dice. So what that means is if you roll the max result, you get to roll it again and add it. And they call it penetrating or something like that. Anyway, so my crit rule is this: if you roll a nat 20, you get to do max damage, and you get to roll again. If you miss, you get to roll max damage plus your normal damage.
sure.
If you hit again, you get double max damage. But if you roll a nat 20 again, you get to do it again. So the most time I ever had seen anybody in the actual field do it is 5 times in a row. And they did 6 times max damage.
Jeez. It probably against an orc or something. Oh, you killed him 8 times over, but you wasted your quadruple crit or your quintuple crit.
No, it wasn't waste. It wasn't. It was against a tough foe, but not that tough. But the most dramatic roll was the last Majestic Fantasy campaign I wrote, and Greg did this. They got on a boat. Greg is a Viking prince, and he became friends with a guy who was a rival, not a Viking rival, but another cultural rival for the same territory. And the guy didn't know it, so they kept it quiet. But Greg convinced him to get on his boat, then he would transport him to where he needed to go. And when they're out to sea, the party ambushed the guy and his group. And the guy was wielding Excalibur. And he was not a low-level fighter. And he was not with low-level fighters. So it was a very dicey fighter on a long boat, which didn't have a whole lot of room to maneuver. And Greg goes roaring up to this guy. And would you know it? Before I could even get a swing in, he does a nat 20 and does 4 of them in a row.
It's only a 5% chance. A 5% chance.
I know he did it. We
wow.
4 in a row. He does 5 times max damage. He actually hits on the last roll as well. And the guy was still up after that, but he had only like 10 hit points, and he went down the next round. And it just. And he said he was glad he made that first roll because I got one swing in, and it was a doozy because the guy was wielding Excalibur. And but he couldn't do much with 10 hit points, and Greg just chopped them. And the other rule I have is I decided I thought OD&D, because I use Swords and Wizardry / OD&D as my base, and I thought fighters are a little underpowered. And I was trying for a long time, because I didn't want to go with upping their number of attack, because that sounds like too much like AD&D to me.
Yeah.
And I wanted a good compromise. And I realized, why not take the 1 hit dice per level, but it's only against 1 hit dice. What happens if you just expand it and just say, you can attack a number of hit dice equal to your level.
Right.
So if you're 6th level, and you fight 3 hit dice foe, you can attack them twice. And you always get a minimum of 1 attack. And I tried that rule, and it works. It works, and it doesn't overbalance the OD&D balance that it has, because OD&D has low hit points and a low to hit chance. So you want to be careful about how much you want to juice up the party. And no, that did, and the fighters. Everybody who played a fighter in my game really loves that role. It's a little bit more thinking, and the way, and in my rule book, I had to explain how I handle it, because people, when I propose it to people, the moment they say, "Well, you're just telling them what the hit dice is."
Yeah, how do you know?
Well, what you do is they make an attack on the foe. You know what the guy's hit dice. You just tell them you have another attack. You don't tell them what hit dice. They'll figure it out, obviously.
Right.
But you tell them a hack. Or you say something like, you attack that guy, but the guy next to him, who may be a 1 hit dice or a 2 hit dice guy, you get an attack on him too. Oh. So I always know what the hit dice. I never tell the players the hit dice. I just know that if he doesn't use up all the hit dice on that one attack, if he's within arm's length of another person he can attack, I will tell him, go ahead and attack. And it's worked out well, and it doesn't take a lot of time.
That's actually pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah,
You already got John Miller yoking that.
Yeah, but obviously you're fighting against a single opponent, and you're 6th level, and you get 2 attacks on him. You know he's three hit dice or low, or he's 3 hit dice. He has only 3 hit dice, but.
Well,
But if you're an expert fighter, you kind of get a sense of your foe after the first few blows anyway. At least that was my experience when I was doing reenactment. So,
well, my crits, bad guys don't get crits unless they're a boss bad guy. In other words, they have something special about them, and that's a bonus to the players. That's basically saying you're not regular people. You're
wimp. No.
You're not. You're not. You're heroes. You guys are heroes. You do. It's like this. Look at any Star Wars movie. They're running through a Death Star, and they don't get. Stormtroopers are terrible shots. Why are there stormtroopers terrible shots? Because they're mooks. They're fighting the heroes. Those stormtroopers, that should never happen. 18 stormtroopers open fire with their lasers. That should be cut to pieces.
Hey, that is valid.
Should be dead. They should be dead on the ground because they got hit with
that's a valid choice for a world, and that's what you chose for yourself. But in my world,
if you've seen a James Bond movie,
you are just starting out like anybody else in that world. It is up to you to make your name, and the people you fight are on the same level as you. So. That's how I ran. That's how GURPS works.
I absolutely understand that, and that is I absolutely understand that. But my world is more the Star Wars world, where there's something a little special about you that you decide to become. Now, they're henchmen and hirelings. I roll those guys 3 dice across the board. They're dudes. Now, some of them make names for themselves. Sometimes they have one that'll be with the party for. Adventure after adventure, and they make names for themselves, but they're not special. These guys are not special. You're special. I saw James Bond. All the Bond movies just popped up on Netflix. I guess they got the rights for 6 months or whatever. And I watched that James Bond movie, and he's got his little Walther PPK, and he's in a Russian terrorist camp, and they've got AK-47s, and he's popping them off right and left, and they can't hit him. 15 of them full, firing. How does that happen? That can't happen unless there's something special about James Bond, which there is. He's just not like everybody else. There's something about him that makes it not like everybody else.
So, I played GURPS for 20 years, and you would think, and yes, GURPS, there's always a risk, even if you're a 300-point character, because you normally start out about 120, 150. There's always a risk you'll die. Get one-shotted, basically. Just how GURPS works.
Right.
Get hit in the wrong spot. Don't have a lot of armor covering it. You roll high damage, and it just goes downhill right away. However, the way it really works out over the long haul is when you're that highly skilled, you're just swatting. Your opponents cannot get through your defense. And you are able to do a lot more than your opponent. You can feint, get them so that they're all discombobulated, and you just go in for the kill. And the reason I use OD&D is because it's the closest in terms of, how like an 8th level character does compared to a 2nd level character to when I run my GURPS campaign, even though it does it in a different way. And even though you don't have the Star Wars Mook rules, when you're 8th level, you're like getting up there in GURPS point. And yeah, when you try to fight a bunch of city guards, it's a lot easier, either in GURPS and in my Majestic Fantasy rules. And so it's not as far apart as you think it is. But the problem with the Mook rule is it just, I don't know. It's just
Well, I'll tell you
it's
something.
it's just treating them like playing pieces, and I hate
Well,
treating
No,
any
let's just
character
Rob.
any
So
differently.
let's talk about your rule. So you have a rule. So let's say I'm an 8th level fighter, right? And I walk in a room and there's 20 orcs in there, 1 hit die, right? I
Right.
get 8 attacks, right? Because that's 8 hit dice. I'm an 8 hit die fighter, and those orcs are 1 hit die, so I get 8 attacks, right?
Yeah, you're likely to probably take about
Okay.
5 or 6.
In my world, you don't get that. In my world, my characters are very careful about avoiding those kind of conflicts because you will get overwhelmed. They don't get 8 attacks. They get their whatever their attack is. Now they're probably going to kill an orc around, but they're going to face they have a very, very real chance of getting overwhelmed. You know what's even worse than that? They walk in a room, there's 20 orcs up on a palisade with a bow. Bows fire twice in my world. 20 orcs, that's 40 arrows coming at them every round.
Twice too, and yes,
And so I'm just saying is that so there's a trade-off in my world. You're a hero, but you have to watch out for certain things, and one of them is getting overwhelmed by foes. I'm just saying it's just different sides of the same coin. You allow them to have 8 attacks, and they're gonna finish those orcs off in 2 rounds, and that 8th level fighter walks in the room with 25 orcs is going to finish them off.
No. Remember, this is OD&D as a base, so no, you kill 5 or 6 orcs because you're not going to make 8 hits.
Okay, that's interesting.
First of all, the orcs is going to be wearing chainmail, so you're going to have to roll a 14 or 15 or better.
Well, but in my world, in 3 rounds, you're going to have 3 dead orcs, and you
Yeah,
still got
okay, so you go in there, you kill your 5 orcs. That's 15 orcs left. And they wound up they hurt you.
Okay, in my world it's 19 orcs left because you killed 1.
All right, well, here's the thing that we're skipping over anyway. All right, Rob's saying that your starting characters aren't special, but the AD&D rules pretty much state that if you are a character class, you are special. That the vast majority of people cannot level up, cannot have an adventuring profession. So just by the fact that you are an adventurer already makes your character special.
Well, that was the whole reason behind minimum abilities. Like the original AD&D rules, first edition say, in other words, to be a fighter, you have to have a 9 strength. They're saying you can't be a fighter with a 5 strength. You can't. In the original AD&D rules, you cannot be a fighter. You cannot be a magic user with less than 9 intelligence. You cannot be a cleric with less than 9 wisdom. So there are minimum that they are saying you are a little more special than the average bear. You've got a little something going for you to be an adventurer. You can't just be, and the old rules look, if you roll 3 dice 6 in order, you couldn't be certain classes. I want to play a fighter more than anything. I really want to play a fighter. Oh, you rolled an 8. You can't be a fighter now. I want to be a fighter. No,
but unfortunately, Judges Guild got to me first. So in my world, every character has a class and level.
And
so,
see,
so
I don't think there's anything.
Classes are just a profession.
There's nothing wrong with you. I'm just saying that these are, and that's what I think is so great about the OSR. If you look at all these different rule systems out there, they're basically just they're basically everybody's homebrew rules. Right. Majestic Wildlands are your homebrew rules, right? I mean, that's what you play by. Those rules you play by. If I ever publish mine, I don't know.
Mile and did the editing and published them for people to use. But yes, these are my home rules.
But Greg Gillespie's got Dragon Slayer. Matt Finch has Swords and Wizardry. The other guy has not. I mean, everybody has their rules, and that's what's great about the OSR is you can play all these different ways, and you find out, or you can yank something for another set. Like that's really, I yanked something from, I don't even remember who had this, but the latest campaign we ran, I changed things up a little bit because I got tired of all these characters, because we were using the old AD&D rules. If you get hit, you start bleeding to death. When you're -10, you're finally dead. Otherwise, you're bleeding to death. Right. Nobody ever died, Rob. Nobody ever died because they knew as soon as somebody gets hit, run over there, bandage them up, it's done. Now, you know what happens when they get knocked out of negative? They must make a saving throw versus death. If they fail their saving throw, they are dead right there. They die. It's already happened twice in my campaign. We just started.
I hate to say it, but my role is more generous on that. I mean, when you first level, you're
Wimps. You're a
negative.
wimp. You wimp. You
Oh,
wimp.
hold on, you don't know the story. So when you first level, you die when you hit -3, and it goes up by 3 uh, every level.
I think
So
that's a good
third
idea.
level,
No, that gives you, yeah. I think
it's not
that's a
the
great
complete
idea.
rule. It's -9 when you're third level. However, there's a cap on it. That is your constitution. So if you say have a 15 constitution, when you get to 6th level, you don't die at negative. Uh, it doesn't go down to -18. You're stuck at
Really?
-15 because that's what your con score is. So if you have a
Okay.
con score of 9, you're going to hit that when you're third level.
Does anybody ever die though? I mean, do they actually bleed and sit there and bleed to death that
I kill
long?
characters all the time because Joe, I try to play it out. I use maps when I'm face to face. I use maps and minis. When I'm online, I use tokens and battle map. And I'm very keenly aware of situational awareness. I try to set it up how it really would be if you were really there.
Mhm.
And what happens is, just like in life, players get out of position all the time. And that's how Joe's character, you can ask him.
Yeah.
He played a thug named Mac. Thug's the character class in my camp under my rule. They fight like a cleric. They do more damage than fighters normally do for their level, but they're like a rogue subclass. And he got caught by some goblins, cut down. The party was in the other room. They were in the middle of a fight. They were too far away to get to him, and he would, you know, when you get cut down the negative, you bleed out -1 per round until you're dead. And they couldn't get a heal spell on him. They couldn't get there that bandaged him, and he died. He died in the sewers alone while the other parties were fighting in the next room. And in a 5e game, which has, of course, a totally different death system, but it's the same technique. In there, they went into the Fandelver. They were running the Fandelver adventure, and they went into the Red Brand hideout. And that was the first time I used dynamic lighting in a major way. And I allow party split. I know how to bounce around between the different groups so nobody's sitting there twiddling their thumb waiting for other people to do their thing. So the party got split. The lighting rules were on, so everybody had their own light source that they couldn't see. And of course, one party member went down this corridor. They didn't pay attention. They went up that way, and he opened the door, and he found 2 of the Red Brand bandits there. They attacked him. He didn't win that fight. He was dead. And then the other party members realized he was missing, and he was missing a while. And they all fanned out. And this is dynamic lighting. So they had to move their token to try to figure out where he's at, and they failed. He rolled his death count in 5e, which is notoriously hard to die in.
Mhm.
He died alone in the dark because he wandered away from the party.
Eric, is Rob saying this with a little too much glee in his voice
Maybe just a wee bit.
because he killed Joe's character?
I am fair. I am fair. I killed a 5e. I killed a 4e party using an Adventure League party because they didn't know how to do tactics, and I knew how to do tactics. And I noticed that their healing surges, they weren't handling it right, and I caught them on a low swing and killed 2 of the party members, and they started cascading. And within 2 rounds, I wiped the entire party out.
So, in other words, you are the killer GM.
I'm a fair killer.
Sure.
So this is for people. Everybody watch this or listen to this. This is what's cool about it. So these are 2 old school DMs, Rob and I. We have different ways of running it. I don't necessarily think one's anybody. I like some of the stuff Rob said. I think this is pretty cool. These are just different ways we run the game, and that, like I said, that's what's so great about this hobby is that you get 15 guys that have been playing for 40 years, and they all have a way to do something. Now, they're probably going to think their way's the best, but it's just all different flavors of the same ice cream, right? It's all ice cream. Ice cream's great. We all love ice cream. It's just, sometimes you have chocolate chip cookie dough. Sometimes you got butterscotch.
Now,
Sometimes
now,
you got vanilla.
now I'll add this. So here's the part I don't think people talk about is why are there so many different ways? And how can you leverage it out for your own benefit? Well, it's because here we make a campaign, we make a setting for it, and characters are going to do something, whether they're PCs or NPCs, they're going to do something. So what's important about what they do? What do you consider important? Is it Bad Mike and that it's kind of like a pulp, Indiana Jones, Star Wars thing where James Bond, where there are mooks and heroes and there are villains with a capital V? Well, if your world's like that, then make your rules reflect that and make your rulings reflect that. And that's okay. But the key is to know your world, know what your world's about. And and you're going to tweak it.
That's knowing your players too, right, Rob? What are your players like? What do they like to play? Because you don't want to play a game your players don't want to play. You want your players to like the game that you're playing. And so, yeah, that like the rule I told you about, the specific rule where you have to make a death save, is because the last campaign I played in, not one single player character died in 2.5 years. Now, a lot of the henchmen died and the hirelings died, but not one single player character. I said, you guys are getting a little lazy. You got, because they figured, he got hit. He'll bleed. Let's let him bleed a few rounds and we'll go over there. And now it's like an actual thing. Now they're like, oh, shit. You might die. You get hit. You make your death save. You made your death save. You're still going to start bleeding to death there. But it's that little kind of like, they have to make that one roll. And that's the one roll, you might roll a 1 and you're dead. Your guy's gone. It's happened twice already. And I like the dynamic it brings to the party. I wouldn't do that with every party. But I think it works this party because they were getting a little lazy. They just were getting like, we're probably not going to die because we've been playing for 40 years and this and that. We didn't last campaign. We didn't die 2.5 years. Not one of us died. I mean, I think it's helped a lot because it's brought a little fear back into they don't want to get hit. They don't want to get bashed like that now. So they plan a little better. They were a little sloppy last campaign. They were playing a little sloppy.
Now, something I've been paying attention in recent years, since it kind of crystallized in my mind, is situational awareness. Now we're doing it with pen, paper, voice, even if it's online, it's a form of pen, paper, whiteboard. The thing is, if you were there, the situation, and I have to thank my LARP experience for making me aware of the actual, how the gulf between the two. But if the character's really there, their situation awareness is often more than what you would see on the table or on the screen. So I make sure that when I think they should know something, I point it out. I just don't sit there going, "Oh, I'm going to kill them today." Ha ha ha. No. I would point out. So in that thing where the character died and the Fandel were done, and I just casually mentioned, you notice the squirrel was missing because Squirrel is the character's name. Because it was about that time they were milling around, and somebody in that group would have noticed that one of their party members was missing. So I'd say Squirrel is missing. Now with the fight with Joe dying, that was just how the battle flowed. That was just bad luck that they couldn't reach him in time. They knew where he was. It just couldn't take out the rest of the goblins fast enough to get to him. But yeah, so the thing is the players will accept a lot more dangerous situation if they know that you have their back on the situation, that you will supply with the information, that you're fair about it, that they would really know if they were there. And then if they ignore it, well, that's on them. If they do the wrong thing with the information, well, that's not your job. That you just point out the information, and it's up to them to do it. And even before you heard healing surge, I said, "Hey, you guys better watch your healing surge. You're getting a little bit low there," and they didn't take. Of course, that was a con game, so they didn't really know me, so they didn't take me seriously until they wound up all dead.
Oh, you had to curb stop them in that case. Yeah, con games you can curb stop people because They should know the rules for con games are different than campaign games. So
Yeah. Wow. Holy crap. We were actually at an hour and 45. We had no agenda today at all.
Oh, I have an agenda. I have a definite agenda.
No, well, you know what I'm saying. Like
Oh,
we weren't like, hey, what are we going to talk about today? It was like
we had no clue.
we had no fucking clue. And
I
No,
wanted to
we
go
had
through.
one clue. I was going to
Well,
show my Black Marsh book, but we
yeah,
knew that
well.
was only going to last 10 minutes.
I wanted to take out B2 and see how many words we could redline, but no, we won't do that.
I will make a B2 comment. No,
Based
so,
on
and-
the new.
so
what?
play
I'm
Mad Libs.
using this in my 5e campaign. I run a
Oh,
5e
nice.
campaign for an old friend in his group once a month. But here's the thing. Oh, by the way, if people want to see what the old format was like, that's the old letter size format. I might make a separate product and just put this layout back up for people who like that. But so I don't like the fact that it's all in a single valley. So what I did for this is I basically it's taking the adventure they're currently on is taking place there. So I took all these caves and separated them out and scattered them across the peninsula.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
that's what so
Makes
they're
much
still
more
pretty
sense.
much they are in the book, but they're scattered and they still have a kind of relationship, but it's not like if you go up to one cave they go, hey, after,
What's up? What up?
yeah. So that's
Well,
that's how I adapted B2 to my situation.
Well, my main problem with the B2 was just the fact that I think if that was the real setup, the monsters would fight among themselves. And so what I would always do is when I ran it, I'd have a very strong leader. I'd make the priests. The old priests were badass, and they basically told them to behave. You guys, you're not going to do it. And when somebody got out of line, they would kill them. They'd wipe them out because they wanted these guys. So the last two times I ran B2, the eventual plot line was they were going to attack the keep with an army of humanoids. And so having that base, they would use the Caves of Chaos as a recruiting ground. Basically, the recruiting. These are guys that have already been recruited to attack the keep, and they're looking for more guys to come in. And so I tried to make a logical reason that they would all be in here. And number one, they wouldn't just try to kill each other. The chaotic evils wouldn't try to kill the lawful evils or the neutral evils or the whatever. But so I had to have that strong leader that would come in and say, no, we've got a goal, and the goal is to. If I did it now, probably thinking about it now, I'd probably have the bad guy charming the leaders of every tribe and saying, nope, charming the leaders of the hobgoblins, the leader of the goblins, leader of the kobolds and orcs, and telling them to behave. You're not going to attack the other tribes because we need you to attack and that was always the high point for my B2 campaign was when they did do an attack. They would eventually actually do an attack, and so they get to play a big large scale battle.
So speaking of charm, here's what I did for my Majestic Fantasy rule. Affects humanoid creatures only. Target makes a saving throw. If the saving throw is failed, the target under the influence of the caster and considers the caster a loyal and trusted friend. So it's not zombification. That's for suggestion in the higher level charm spells. But the duration of the spell is permanent until the duration of the spell is permanent unless dispelled.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Then,
yeah.
Well, see, I like the part where they're friends because you have the one of the reasons that we're probably I don't know the next few editions we're going to see charm disappear entirely from the spell list is because of the squicky uses of it. I'm going to go in and charm all the barmaids, and we're going to have an orgy upstairs. Something really just squicky like that. That's some idiot. And so that's why we've always said that they're your close friend, And so most of the time, you're not banging your close friends. They're not going to let, so you could charm the barmaid, but she's not going to let you into her nightgown because you're a friend. You're just a friend of hers. You're not her lover or whatever. Whoa, back off.
You get a free drink.
Yeah, we're gonna be I'm your friend. My goodness, that's sick, man. I'm like your sister, and you're telling me that's gross. So that eliminated all those squicky uses that a lot of times you get players in your campaign that I got charm, man. I'm gonna do this. Well, not my campaign because here's what the rule is. The rule is this. So, like I said, just as long as you're consistent, I think that works. I mean, if you want to run a darker, grimmer campaign, I guess you can do stuff like that. But
Yeah, this is my 3-book-in-1
Oh,
nice.
Handbook of the
Wow.
Recently Deceased, and then
the Book of
Cool.
Hans.
I heard about this and I downloaded the PDF for this, but it's kind of nice to have on the print because it's just for know my hobby better kind of thing. And of course,
That's
then
funny.
they have Black Martian here.
You should
And at
you
least
should
I got to
auction
see
that off
the
or
print
something.
quality of it. So,
Dude, man, you should auction that off one Friday night. That'd be funny. Just
yeah, I opened it up. What are they saying about Black Marsh? Am I deadly or something?
Who wants a 3-in-1? Here you go.
Well, folks, we're gonna wrap this up now.
We got 3 minutes.
Oh, with the upside down and
oh my gosh!
Yeah, it was this was a horrible. Something horrible happened to this one.
Jeez, no kidding.
Yeah.
Who's the printer? Was that a Lulu print, Rob, or what was it?
Lightning Source food.
Lightning. Yeah, Lightning Source. So the worst thing, I had one thing type of Lightning Source. I got some Nod books printed, and it was so light you could barely read them. I just sent them back, and they gave me some new ones. But that's the worst I've ever had with Lightning Source. Which yeah, you're gonna by probably 10% of the time you're gonna have something ridiculous like that.
It's funny because I wasn't obnoxious to the drive-through representative, but after I reported the third book, they must have lit a fire under ass because I got this the good copy a week later. I mean, I didn't have to wait a month for this thing to get.
Somebody got chewed out. Yeah, somebody got chewed out. Holidays haven't started yet.
Well, this was a holiday special because we're missing many of our regulars who are celebrating the holiday weekend. But Rob and I were able to drag in Bad Mike, who will
Thanks for letting me hop on. It was fun. I was doing nothing tonight, so it's I'm going to go watch Netflix after this. So not like you wasted my time in any way, shape, or form. So
I'm watching The Wire for the first time.
Oh, Rob! That's a great show.
I'm up to the last episode of the 3rd season. Stringer Bell just got his ass shot. So
spoilers! Spoiler alert! There.
Here's a spoiler: the Jets lost today.
Oh, that's not a spoiler alert. I just didn't think it was going to be that bad. But boy, that was.
I turned the game off. At the end of the half when I saw, hey, Jets interception. Look at it, pick 6, followed by a 99-yard pick 6 in the other direction.
99 yards, yeah.
So yeah, that's when I was like, all right.
Which game was that in?
Yeah, when he returned an interception or a fumble for.
I think at this point the Jets have. See, Aaron Rodgers says he's coming back. Eric, I don't think he's coming back. I think they're using this to convince Aaron Rodgers not to come back because that team's going to be so terrible by the end of December. They're going to say, "Look, let's just get a real big. We're going to get a really early draft pick next year. We're going to get you a wide receiver." And just don't come back because they don't want him to get hurt again on Christmas Day. That would be awful.
No, that would not be a Christmas present.
Oh,
all right, folks. As always, be safe, be well. God bless. Roll the dice, roll them well. Tomorrow night, Saturday night, Gamers Health, 8 p.m. Myself, my wife Rach. We do have a few updates, and other than that, we'll catch you later.
Thank you, everybody. Later.
Be good.